Hello, students. Good morning and welcome back to the subject of productions and operations management. We are dealing with unit number 2, that is facility location. These are the topics that we are going to continue in the further lectures. Few of them we have already completed with, and few we are dealing right now. In the yesterday's lecture, we have studied the consequences, that's the result, as well as we have overviewed the factors or determinants that are to be considered while or before selecting a site. Few of the factors like availability of the power supply, labor, raw materials, favorable government policies, and proper transportation facilities we have already studied earlier. In this session, we would consider few more determinants that affects the decision while selecting the production site. But moving forward, or before moving forward, let me just clear it that we are dealing with the facility location. That's the topic that we are dealing with. What is facility location? Location is the answer to the question where the production should be continued from or where the production should be taken. And answer to this question is said to be the location that is selected, the site that is selected by the entrepreneur. When he selects the sites, generally what happens is he may commit many types of mistakes. I am refreshing those topics that we have already discussed earlier. So what he does is that many times out of consciousness or without the reason, he may commit some kind of errors. And when he commits some kind of errors, the consequences or the results are really fatal. Fatal means they are really dangerous, which may affect the survival of the whole business as it is in future. And that is why not to commit those mistakes is the prime concern of any entrepreneur. Or if he commits the mistakes, then the rectification of these mistakes is really big deal for him. And that is why he should take care that this decision related to where my location or where the location for the manufacturing should be is of a very important concern, or maybe the decision that is generally taken up by the entrepreneurs. As far as the importance is concerned, yes, we have dealt the errors, we have seen it earlier, the consequences we have checked out, and also we have checked out few of the factors. If you remember the chart, we have checked out with the 12 factors. We have overviewed 12 factors. 12 factors are generalized factors that may be considered or that may have to be taken care of before taking the decision related to the selection of a site. And those, out of those 12, we have already checked out with the 6 kind of factors in the earlier lecture. In this lecture, in this session, we are going to see few more. We move onwards from 7th and onwards. As I told you, 1 to 6, and we have briefed it earlier also. We have checked it. Those are considered to be the very prime factors, and now we are going to see the rest of the 6 factors. What are these factors? These factors are such determinants or they are such concern which should be taken care by the entrepreneur before taking up the decision where to locate my plant. Or if I am an entrepreneur, then I need to consider all these list of 12 factors, and only then I should take a proper decision. And that is why these factors we are doing it in quite a detail. We are moving from the 6th to 7th, and 7th is said to be the environment and community. Now what is this environment and community? Many states have strict environmental policies that have to be followed by the industries operating there. At times, opposition from the community regarding the construction of the plant in the region can also disrupt the whole project. Many times what happens is the state government is very careful, and they are very strict about the environmental policies. You should not release this much of carbon, or there should not be this much of this type of pollution, and likewise and the industries have to really take care that they are not doing all such kind of things against the regulations. And at that time, taking up the unit wherein the disposal is too much or waste is too much that is generated, at that time you can't take to those kind of states wherein this type of things are really restricted or taken care of strictly. At that time, if you are having your industries or if you locate it in a wrong state, then you may have to pay a very big price for it. And many a times it has been seen also that opposition from the community, that means if the community or the people localites who are living there, they are not of the willingness to bring about any industries or in the surroundings, and in that case what happens is they oppose the proposal of bringing up the industry, and they may not allow the project to go on. At that time they may disrupt the whole project. So that may also be the scenario. So environmental factors as well as the community in the region should also be considered. Thus proper care should be taken by the entrepreneur for the concern of the environment and security of the local people. At times bringing up the factories or taking up the projects in some kind of states or the communities where the people are not willing to take up with any kind of manufacturing, or they are not ready to risk any of their comforts, or they are not ready to risk their health, and in those areas it is very difficult to take up with the industry. And if you just slip into such kind of areas, or if you plan out something in such kind of states or community, the resistance would be there from the localites, and that may not allow the unit to survive for a long period of time. That is why environmental as well as community factors should be considered. The eighth one that comes up is proximity to subcontractors. Proximity is the nearness. Nearness means subcontractors are all those people who may be providing us with the say sub-assemblies or maybe the spare parts which are required. See, every unit may be working with so many machines, so many type of different equipments, and there may be a very kind of very simple kind of wear and tear required for the machines or the equipments from time to time. And if these were for these wear and tear, whatever the spare parts you may need, whatever the supplementaries or maybe the sub assemblies that we need, they are not being manufactured in house. It's not possible for the unit to manufacture every inputs that are required for manufacturing. Many things are being outsourced, and if these outsourced things are not nearby, that means if the proximity of these subcontractors is not there, or say some kind of sub assemblies or sub components that we need for the production, they are not available from the nearby area, what will happen is we will increase our production cycle. That means આપણે જે વસ્તુ કદાચ 2 દિવસમાં available હોય અને કામ ચાલુ થઈ જાય, એની બદલે we will have to wait for say 10 days 15 days if we are going to get it from the subcontractors. So all those units who depend highly for the outsourced type of say spare parts or components, at that time getting them and then continuing with your production becomes difficult. So it is also very important at that time for the entrepreneur to check out that whether whatever the components or assemblies that I need, whether they are available in the near proximity or near periphery or not, whether the subcontractors are there in within his reach or not, or else he will disrupt the whole production cycle. So it is a very important point to be considered. The same thing has been explained here. New establishment may be in need of ancillary units producing sub-assemblies or components that may be very important for the large establishments. Thus, the place where already subcontractors are established, it becomes extremely advantageous for the new unit. So, new unit, if I am an entrepreneur, I want to produce something and I want to take up, and I highly depend on outsourced components or outsourced assemblies, then at that time, what is important for me to check is that I should take up my industry to such areas wherein I can get this advantage very easily, or I can get these sub assemblies or components very easily required for the production of my product. So what I'll do is I'll take up my industry to already established contractors. That means already to those areas who are already established there, they can provide me with the components very easily. I'll definitely take up my unit there. So that is what is said to be proximity to subcontractors. We move on with the ninth one, that is saying easy availability of cheap land. Naturally, the land is the basic input for any production that we have already studied land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, say somewhere in economics, right? So land plays very important role, because it is on this land that we are going to have, say, the setup of the factory, or maybe the building, maybe the construction of the site, or whatever the facilities that we require. It is on this land that we have to make it. So it is very important that when you need the land, and if the land is available at the cheap rates, then definitely it will be decreasing your cost, overall cost of production. So wherever the easy availability of land is, or say cheap land is available at low prices, then entrepreneur will always try to shift his or always try to set up his plant in such kind of areas. So land can be considered as one of the basic necessity for the construction of a new plant. For example, here the example has been quoted: the states in which if the land is available at the cheap rates as compared to the states with already established industries may be preferred, and may be preferred as a choice. That means if you are taking up with already, or if you are trying to shift your industry, or taking up starting a new industry in already established industrial zone, or maybe the states who are very industrialized, at that time if you are going to take up your industry somewhere there, then what happens is, yes, definitely you get other advantages, but at that time the land that is to be acquired in that particular state becomes an expensive affair. The land would not be available in at the cheap rates, or maybe the affordable prices. So it is always that when you want to check out with the new establishment, we try to see that wherever we get the land at the cheap rate, we'll definitely move there. So many times further development of the unit all is also undertaken into consideration before buying more land at cheap rates. That means if you wish to start with a single plant right now, and if you have the vision of starting, say, another plant within that area itself in, say, 2 or 3 years, then definitely you will try to see that I take my unit to such a kind of area or such a kind of state wherein the land is available in plenty, as well as it is available at the affordable or cheap rates. Then my further expansion also becomes affordable, or say it becomes economical. So it is always that easy availability of cheap land is the concern for the entrepreneur, because if you are going to purchase heavy or say you are going to purchase very expensive land, then that expense we are going to always cover from the production, or maybe we are going to cover from the product. How we are going to cover from the product ની price જે આપણે ફિક્સ કરશું, એમાં overall overheads હશે એ બધાને એડ કરીને we are going to fix the price of the a product, and that may cost high, or that may rise high, and that may not be a compatible product in the market. Then that is why it is very important that every aspect of production should be taken care of. And as you all know already, that land plays very important role. Then getting the land at affordable price is also the prime concern. Next, the 10th one comes up is less construction cost. Always it's not important, or it's not necessary that whatever the land that we have, or whatever the building that we have, it is already constructed. It is up to the entrepreneur to see that whether we want to go for the existing building, whether we want to go for the existing factory premises, or we want to have the built up of our own according to our requirements. Then at that time what happens is, we'll always see that whatever the construction cost is, we can minimize those costs. So those places which have the advantage of having the cheap labor, or maybe availability of the construction material at a cheaper rates, are always preferred over the others, where it may prove to be little more expensive. That means we'll try to see that if we are getting the cheap land, then we'll try to see that if the construction also comes up cheap, or it comes up, say, affordable, then what happens is we are trying to cut the cost there. So wherever the labor is cheap, we take up the unit there. Wherever the construction material comes up easily, or say it is available within the short distance, then we'll always try to calculate that we should have our land purchased, our site being taken where the construction cost can be minimized. So these are said to be the 10th one, which is said to be less construction cost. And we have also seen easy availability of land. We are moving towards the 11th one, that is availability of cheap, skillful and efficient labor. Naturally, howsoever your unit may be capitalized, or it may be automated, or it may be mechanized, right? There is always the requirement of labor. Many a times you even require skillful labor, very efficient labor is required for some kind of specialized goods. Then what is important for the entrepreneur to think that if okay, automated plants are established, you can take it anywhere, or you can take it to other considerations and you can start with the business. But wherein you know that everything depends on the skillful labor, or it depends on the labor that I am going to hire, everything is say manual or men oriented work that I am going to take up, then in that case what I have to consider is I get the skillful labor as well as efficient labor at a cheaper rates. If I can get this, then I can reduce ultimately the cost of production. So this is also very very important. So the same has been explained here. As compared to the developed countries, the labor is cheap in India, but to get the efficient labor is a big deal. That is why when selection of place for the unit is to be made, those sites are preferred where the labor is more skillful and efficient. I have quoted this example earlier also, that supposingly if I want to start with the unit which produces say silk saris and say ODC silk sari, then what I want to have it is I'll require the skillful labor for the same. If I don't get the skillful labor, then it is a labor oriented industry. The silk is being woven by say the silk threads are being woven and the sari is being prepared mostly by the people living in the or the labor of the Orissa. And if they if I'm going to take up this particular work, and if I don't get the people who are expertised in this particular thing, then ultimately my venture would be a big failure. So what I'll try to see is I'll take up my unit to such a kind of area wherein I get the skillful and efficient labor, and from where my work can be run very easily. So where the say instead of capital oriented, if human oriented activities are there, and if you want or there is a requirement of skillful labor, then you have to shift your unit to such a kind of place wherein you get the efficient and skillful labor, right? So that's the 11th point. 12th and the last one comes up is said to be the availability of residences, schools, hospitals, etc. See, these are such kind of amenities which any person or any community may require. So every person or every entrepreneur who is starting his new business will always will have to consider this, that if I'm going to hire people, then I'll have to provide them with the residences. Definitely for the children, they need the schools. For the basic help, they need the hospitals, maybe the clubs, the entertainment areas. Those things are required. And so if things are available in the short distance, then that would be the best thing, and people would not think or would not just deny because of the location there. Then people would start coming to those areas wherein this kind of availability is there. So usually new factories are given land in the remote villages by the state government. Generally at such places there is no availability of residential complexes. Naturally schools are not there, hospitals are not there in the remote areas, or maybe in the say rural areas. These facilities are not available, and when you try to bring the labor, when you try to hire the people to such kind of places, they'll not be ready to come there. Why? Because there is no availability of such kind of facilities. So it is very important that if you are depending on you are depending too much on labor, and if you wish to bring the labor, then you have to take your unit to such a place wherein the labor can easily shift to your say factory. They can come up, they have the basic requirements fulfilled, and then they are ready to work for the production. That is why in such circumstances companies have to create these facilities on their own, or if it is easily available, that can be done. If not, and if the land is say comparatively cheaper, then you have to make all these arrangements for the labor or the people that you are hiring. That means companies themselves have their own townships. In those townships, we must have heard so many times that it is the township in which the say the employees are given the accommodation and everything. In this township all the basic facilities are available, and if the factory or if the owner is not getting the things from the nearby area, then he'll have to set up all these by his own. But anyways, whatever is the requirement, basic requirement of the HR or human resource, that has to be provided. That means all these factors are to be considered broadly by the entrepreneur. See, there are few to list. We have listed only 12. There may be so many other factors that a person needs to shortlist, and after shortlisting and from where, which location I am going to get the maximum advantage, that location becomes my ideal location, and that location will be the preferred site. So these are said to be the 12 such kind of factors. 6 we have already studied prior, and the next 6 we have studied here, completing it with the 12th one. Next that we are going to take up are the steps or maybe the process. See, selection of the site or facility for any kind of unit is a big deal, as I told you before also. It cannot be a randomized decision. It is very important decision because it is irreparable. Once you are going to take up a decision, once you start your setup, and once in one fine morning you feel that this your location is not worth, then that will be a big problem for the unit. So before taking the site or before selecting the site, if you go logically, or if you take up the steps that we are going to learn, or the process of selecting a site properly, then ultimately we can come to a better conclusion. So we need to take care of these steps properly. The steps that we are going to study, we'll be studying with the help of the diagram, and then we'll go one by one with the different steps. So let us just refresh it once. By now we know that it is so very important for the entrepreneur to consider the decisions like what to produce and where to produce. That means it's very crucial, and thus proper care should be taken by him for while or before selecting the site for production. Any mistakes committed by him may lead to fatal consequences. We have already seen that. So as to avoid any mistakes in deciding the place, a proper methodical process of selection of a site can be followed. This process is kind of gradual decision making stages that can be adopted to select the exact site. The process consists of following stages. We will have detailed discussion on each stages, as it consists of various subsections also. The diagram that follows this slide may be very helpful in understanding the process. So if you don't want to make any mistake, and if you make any mistake, it is very difficult to repair it. At that time it becomes very important to go to select a process not in a randomized manner but in a proper logical sequence. And then at that time, if we want to follow the sequence, few steps have been mentioned, few processes are there, few stages are there which can be followed, which is considered to be the process of selecting the facility location. It consists generally of 4 stages, but in these 4 stages there are so many subdivisions also. So again I repeat, and I instruct all the students to keep the proper notes for it. The diagrams may help you a lot, but you should know that where this diagram is being used and how to make the proper use of this diagram. So it is very crucial that few things you may not get it from any other references. You will have to follow the notes of your own, and that is why while viewing the videos, make it a point to see that you note down important areas, you note down the sections as you are taking up in the running lectures. So the diagram that we are going to see and we are going to study the next is very important. And as far as examination point of view is concerned, the factors that we have dealt, the 12 factors, it is very prone question that is being asked, and even the steps that of the facility location selection is also the question that is often asked in the examination. So we need to check out on that also. All right, now let us study the diagram. If you see the diagram, you can see that there are 4 types of circles, right? It is we are starting from first, that is within the country or outside. I think there is a kind of technical error because of which you can't see the stuff that is there in the second and third division, but I am going to repeat it for you. It is for the first stage. If you are selecting a facility location, if I am an entrepreneur, suppose, right, I want to take up with the new setup, I'll have to check out with the first decision, or first step should be whether I want to locate it within my own country or I want to take it outside in the sense I want to go international, I want to take it to some other country. That should be my prime decision, first decision, the foremost primary decision, that whether I want to take it to my own country or I shall take it outside, right? The next important stage that comes up is in which region do I want to take up, right? Whether east, west, north, south, which region I want to take up, that becomes my second stage. Once I clear it out with that, I have to select with the locality or the community in the particular area, that okay, if I want to select west side, then in west side which area I have to go for, and that area tells me about the third stage, or that is the third stage wherein I decide my locality or my community. And the fourth one that comes up is the exact selection of that particular site. Supposingly, I'll explain you with the example. Suppose I want to start with ABC construction or ABC unit, right? If I want to start with this production unit, first of all, what I have to decide, whether I want to continue in India or I want to take it outside of India, right? If I'm trying to see that okay, I want to take it to India, I want to have my production done within my own country, then I decide that the next important area comes up, or the stage comes up, is deciding or selecting the region. Now India is such a vast country, I have to decide that in this vast country, where am I supposed to take my unit to, east, west, north, south, where am I supposed to be? Now in that case, if I decide that okay, western region should be my prime location or my prime locality or the region in which I want to take up. Now west has got its own number of states, right? So third decision that comes up is in which particular locality or community, say I decide the state there, that okay, I wish to take up in my own country, I wish to take up with the west side of the country, I wish to take up my unit somewhere to Gujarat state, which is lying on the western border of the country. That becomes my third prime decision, or maybe the stage. And after that, I have to think on the basic, that is the fourth area or the fourth stage, that is selecting the exact site. Now if I select the state Gujarat as the state in the prior stage, I have to select that okay, in Gujarat also, where I need to take up, because Gujarat is again a big state, anywhere randomly I cannot put up. So it is, say in the state of Gujarat, I am going to select Rajkot as the city. In Rajkot, I am going to select the industrial area of GIDC Metoda, right? And I'm going to have my unit somewhere located in plot number 9. Now that becomes my selection of exact site. This is how the entrepreneur selects out of these 4 stages. He passes his decision through these 4 stages logically, and then he decides that okay, this GIDC, in our example, it is GIDC Metoda, right, industrial estate, plot number 9 or shade number 9 should be my exact site. This is how the process goes on with the 4 stages. In the further topics, or in the further explanation of these 4 stages, we are going to even see the sub points. So it is very important that we check out with the proper logical sequence. Let us see it. As we all could see in the diagram, that the decision may fall from macro to micro, means from deciding the country to, say, in country or international. From that wide decision, from that macro decision, we are coming gradually towards the micro decision. That means deciding from very wide choice to become it a particular site. When we move on, there are 4 stages, as you can see it. It is deciding on domestic or international location. Second stage, it is selection of region, right? Third stage, it is selection of community or locality. Fourth stage, selection of the exact site. If you see it, there are 4 stages that has been explained with some kind of sub points. That means the sub points are also to be considered by us. So while deciding on domestic or international, that means we have to consider the factors that we have to check it, right? When we go to the selection of the region, a stage ahead, then we have to see again those factors while selecting this particular region, right? When we go to the third stage, when we are selecting the community or locality, again there are so many factors that we need to consider. And at the last, when we are selecting the exact site, again there are different set of factors which we have to select. Even we have to select at the 4th stage that which site exactly you want to go, whether it is rural, whether it is suburban, whether it is city, or we often call it urban site, right? Like these, there are sub points included in these 4 particular sections. What we are going to do is, we are going to start with the first one today, that is we have to decide the very prime and the very basic decision, that is deciding on domestic or international location, that whether if I am going to start with my plant, whether I want to continue in India, which is my native land, or I want to take it to some other foreign countries. See, if I want to take it to my own country, then I have to follow selection of region, selection of community, and selection of the exact site. But when I am taking to some other country, geographically it is a different place, it is having so many set of different regulations. There may be tropically, or say topographically it may be totally different, and so many other factors are there when I am going international. So those factors will be studying quite in detail in the first part or in the first stage. And if we are selecting our own country, then the series follows, that means the selection of region, the community, or the site, right? So here first we are going to discuss everything related to the international location. Now, in what circumstances, or if we are going international, then what kind of things we should consider, that we will see it for in the first stage, and then we move on further with second, third, fourth, right? So let us try to understand all the steps quite in detail. Now, deciding on domestic or international location, we are dealing with the first stage or first step. This is the first step in plant location process, wherein the manufacturer decides whether the production unit should be located within the country, that is domestic, or he wants to choose any international location. If he finds that his product is well manufactured somewhere else, and say maybe the weather is suitable, maybe the technologies are available, maybe the regulations are such, maybe the skilled labor you get it very easily there, whatever the type of or the nature of product is, on depending upon that we can decide that whether we want to stay within the country and we need to continue with the production, or we want to take it international. So it depends, and this is the prime decision on which the rest of the stages are then dependent. With the increasing globalization, the manufacturer gets this advantage of getting the alternative of taking his unit outside his native country. See, before few years we could have not thought about it. Say 1991 LPG policy, you must all be knowing about it. Liberalization, privatization, and globalization. This was a great outbreak, and it was a great breakthrough rather in the economy of the country, wherein the government decided that the country will take up with liberalization policy, privatization policy, and globalization. When we talk about globalization, means each unit has got the option of taking its units, say services, or maybe the business, trade, commerce, or production to any other country, or any other country can enter in our country and can make the use of the same, right? So with the increasing globalization, the manufacturer have got this kind of advantage, as I told you. But definitely there are wide ranges of the factors which are to be considered properly. So if we are going outside the country, say from the difference in the climate or difference in the geographical situation, everything differs, and that is why so many factors are to be considered. Before few years it did not get the due relevance, but with the business getting international, he has this choice of taking it to the foreign countries. I just have mentioned it, that before few years if I wish to just go outside and say start with my manufacturing plant or say service sector, then that was a dream. But now that we all have been globalized, the things have changed in the last 20-25 years. It is not a big deal to start any unit somewhere outside our own native country also. That means we can take up the option of even starting in the foreign countries. Thus, if the business decides on foreign country, the entrepreneur has to consider all the relevant factor while evaluating the international location option for establishing a new site. That means if I, being the entrepreneur, if I wish to start with the new site, then I need to think that okay, if I want to take it to the foreign country, there are ample of things I have to think on, ample of things I have to consider first. I have to take the decision related to them first, and then I can select the foreign country as the location for my new site. So what are those factors? Those factors we are going to see it now. Here, as you can see it, there is a chart given here wherein all the factors to be considered while evaluating international location has been explained, say in the picture here, and then all these factors have been explained in detail also. So in this session we may take up, say there are, if you can see, there are say 12 types of factors that a person, if he wants to go international, or if he wants to set up his unit somewhere in the foreign country, then he needs to check all these 12 factors overall, right? And in this session we are going to see 6 of them. The rest we take up to the next lecture. Here we will be checking out from the first, that is the regulations, right? When we talk about the regulations, regulations means rules and regulation of a country. The country in which we are living and its rules and regulations may be completely different from the country in which we want to take, or if I want to take my project somewhere outside the country, then I definitely first concern is to check its regulatory policies and measures, that how the country takes up, or how the country runs its regulatory system, and whether this system is suitable to my product, my production, to me, to my policy, my business or not. That is the prime concern, and that is why regulation becomes the first important factor. Let us check it out. What is the inner content of it? Regulations, it may be the rules and say rules and policies. Say strict rules can be there, there can be liberal rules, so it is depending on these measures that any person can decide. So the same is here. Liberal or strict regulatory measures by the government may be the reason of selecting or avoiding the facility location setup. See, if the liberal regulations are there, definitely it would be very advantageous to move in there. But if strict regulatory systems or measures are there of that particular government, then it becomes difficult to set a new venture there, right? So definitely the decision of taking the setup to the foreign country would be the wise decision if the liberal regulations are there. Again, if the liberal regulations in the foreign country may be also the reason of setting up the venture in the foreign country. See, if domestic country is providing up with the say harsh decisions or harsh regulations or maybe strict regulations, then that may not be favorable for us. In that case, we may take up our unit to those countries whose regulations are comparatively liberal. Then we'll try to see that our project is being set up somewhere in the liberal site, or maybe at the country, or in the country wherein we have the regulations which is comparatively simple or liberal in nature. So that is how it becomes the first factor. The next factor comes up is additional resources. At times, so many types of resources may be required by the company. Maybe starting with very primary things, getting the land, getting the human beings, getting the machines, the resources, raw materials, so many type of technologies, so many things we require as the input. So many resources may be there, right? And if the desirable resources, like if you are going to start a unit wherein you need a proper raw material which is available in the nature, and that natural resource is available in a particular country in abundance, then definitely we will try to see that our unit goes there, because then the availability of this particular or unique type of raw material we can only get it from there, and at that time we can take our unit to those areas where we get the additional resources. Thus, the desirable resources like say natural resources, skilled human resources, technology, etc. are available in abundance in the international locations. Provides the organization with the access to all these additional resources very easily, that can be considered. That means if you need all these things, and if all these things are available in abundance in some kind of location, say outside the country, in the foreign country, then definitely we need to consider it, because then the access of these additional resources becomes very advantageous for the new setup, and it can be considered very on a very primary basis, right? So it is the two factors that we have checked out. When these factors are to be considered, mind you, in this particular unit there are so many factors, and we are studying the determinants from different angles, so you have to remember it as it is. You can not just mix up and mingle all the kind of factors in one place and then you put up an answer, because for each particular situation there is each set of factors or determinants, so we need to see it or study it properly. Again, I wish that you all maintain the proper notes for it. So what we are doing right now, we are taking up with the location at the first stage. That means we are deciding that whether to go with the own country, or we are going to take up the setup to the international levels. Yes, if we are going to take up at the international location, or maybe in the other country, at that time we need to consider first two factors that we have seen, that is regulations or whatever the additional resources that are available in that particular country. We move on to the third one, wherein the lower cost of overhead is there, where the cost of overheads can be minimized. That country, that situation or that particular location becomes very advantageous. Say there may be low cost of labor, material, transportation, finance, lend, and other requirements are available at a cheap rate, or maybe easily available than the domestic setup. Definitely we'll try to see that we take our unit there. So that is said to be the lower cost of overheads. That can be one of the factor which makes the difference. Next comes up is the incentives. Many states or many countries, so as to promote industries and commerce, the central or the state government of certain countries may provide with so many types of incentives, like say infrastructural facilities for the industries, insurance facilities, tax exemptions, right? Subsidized loans are provided to the foreign investors. Then what happens is, if we want to take the advantage of all these type of facilities provided by the government, these incentives plays important role, and if we can get it as the manufacturer or entrepreneur, definitely no one would miss it, and this provides very advantageous position to the entrepreneur. So while or before taking the decision, definitely incentives provided by that particular state or central government has to be considered. Next comes up is fifth one, that is exploitation of specific advantage. That means what happens is, if you are already established brand, or if you are having the technologies which is popular all over the world, then at that time taking your brand or taking your manufacturing or service sector anywhere in the world may not be a big problem, because you are being welcomed with the open arms by the countries. They even want the services of this kind of say branded things, and they get their own advantage. So what happens is, it is the kind of situation wherein the country wherein you want to move the new product, that is also advantageous, and to us also being the entrepreneur, that also becomes the advantageous position, wherein the country is ready to offer us with so many different types of facilities. So this type of specific advantage can be grabbed by the established entrepreneur starting something new in this area. That means if you want to take it international, and if you are a branded if you are a producer of a branded thing, then definitely people are ready to accept you, and people are ready to provide you with many different types of advantages, and one must grab that. Next comes up sixth one, and the last in the series for today's lecture is said to be economies of scale. I think you know about the term economies of the scale. Economies of scale means producing the bulk items. When you produce bulk items, so many things you're producing in bulk, that reduces the per unit cost, and that is what is said to be the advantage of economies of scale. That means if you are going to produce, if the demand of a particular product is high in one country, and if you are ready to give them the or you are ready to supply them with this particular demand, or you can produce something in a large quantity, what happens is you are getting the advantage of economies of scale. If you are getting the advantage of economies of scale, you can produce the goods at a nominal rate, or maybe the per unit cost may be reduced. When this happens, what happens is it turns up to be the boon for the companies setting its unit in such countries. So wherein the demand is already high, and you have the capacity of supplying this kind of high demand, or supplying the product for this demand, then what happens is that you can use the economies of scale. That means per unit cost can be reduced. If you are reducing the per unit cost, profit margin can be increased, and ultimately what happens, it's a boon situation for the companies. That is how these are the 6 factors. Let me tell you, whatever the factors, generalized factors we have dealt, they are different, right, related to the overall location. Here we are dealing with the steps. steps consist of 4 stages. Out of these 4 stages, we only checked out the first one, in which if you are selecting something domestic, then the forward stages, that is 2 3 4 will come. And if you are selecting the international site for your business, then at that time you have to consider few set of factors, and those factors are 12 in number. 6 we have dealt today, and the next we shall be dealing, the next 6 will be dealing in the next lecture. That's the end of part 4, unit 2. When we meet next, we shall be dealing with the next factors, right? By that time, take care of yourselves and be safe. Thank you.